Good Saturday morning of the third week of Lent. This is a great text. Well, the church really selects well during these seasons like Advent and Lent because they're focused. They're focused on the penitentialness, say, in a deep sense of the word. Okay, they're not superficial at all. Not that the gospel's ever superficial, but these are really aimed at things. Jesus addressed this parable. This is from Luke. To those who were convinced of their own righteousness and despised everyone else. Two people went up to the temple area to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee took up his position and spoke this prayer to himself. Oh God, I thank you that I'm not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I pay tithes on my whole income. But the tax collector stood off at a distance and would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast and prayed, "O God, be merciful to me, a sinner." I tell you, the latter went home justified, not the former. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. The one who humbles himself will be exalted. This is a powerful text. You have to know, I don't know all the details of it. This is a potent text, okay? Here described the two people. The two went up to pray. One was the Pharisee, the other tax collector. Now the Pharisee took up his position, spoke this prayer. He thanks God oh God, I thank you that I'm not like the rest of humanity. Greedy, dishonest. He's a good guy. And even this tax collector, see? The tax collector worked for the Romans. That is bad. That's betrayal. Okay? This guy is bad to the bone, the tax collector. This is no minor thing. We joke about tax collection, not in that world. It was a betrayal of the Hebrews by working for the Romans. It's as ugly as it gets. I mean that. You got to know he's a bad guy. Now, the good guy is the Pharisee. And not only is he good, he's exemplarily good. Did I say that right? He said, watch what he says. I fast twice a week. He's only obliged, I believe, to fast once a week, not twice. He does twice. All right? And I pay tithes on my whole income. He wasn't obliged to pay tithes on his whole income, but just part of it. So he is extraordinarily penitential, and he's extraordinarily generous, okay? He fasts twice. Then he has to twice as much as he needs to, and he pays tithes most likely twice as much as he needs to. So he is the epitome of fidelity, all right? The tax collector, on the other hand, he's working for the enemy. He is a betrayer. This guy is a public sinner. This guy's as bad as it gets, and he knows it. He said he couldn't even raise his eyes to heaven. He could hardly pray, and he beat his breast. And he said, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." See, he knew who he was. He knew he was a sinner. The Pharisee is not a sinner by any sense of understanding of his time. In fact, he's the opposite. And the tax collector is the real sinner. He's the real enchilada. He's the real McCoy. Okay? I tell you, but yet he's the one who went home justified, not the former. Because the Pharisee exalted himself, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. It isn't whether they've played by the rules or don't play it. The Pharisee was playing preeminently by the rules, and the tax collector was in violation of the most basic rules. But the tax collector was humble. In the sense he knew he was a sinner. The Pharisee believed he was not. And in that way, he believed that he himself was the cause of his own salvation, as it were, the Pharisee, because he was playing by the rules preeminently. The tax collector had no leg to stand on. He was as bad as it got. Okay? And that's how he stood before God. He stood before God. He stood as a person in need of forgiveness, of redemption. He has no pretense to innocence, and he makes no excuses. In a sense, the Pharisee didn't need redemption. He saw himself as redeemed and as his own redeemer. He plays by the rules. The tax collector knew he violated all the rules, that no redemption came from him. It had to come. It had to come from God. You see? He could not justify himself. And that's the beginning of both of wisdom and redemption. None of us are innocent. One of the dangers that comes from piety is one can assume because one is pious and goes to church, etc., that in that sense that they are religiously innocent. When in fact, we go to church to worship because God is God and we are the creature, and to ask for forgiveness. The first part of Mass is very, very important, is the Confiteor. We're not just there running our mouth. It's because we come to it as sinners, you see. That's a truth too. The recognition of who and what we are before God and before life. The enemy, and I say as I understand, the enemy of holiness is not sin. It's arrogance. It's to believe in one is the author of one's own salvation. To not recognize who and what we are before God and before life. I think of, what makes a marriage fail so often is arrogance. I'm thinking, of course I always think as a male, okay? I don't know what she's complaining about. I keep my nose clean. I do everything, you know what I mean? Maybe you forgot to tell her that you loved her. You get it? Sometimes we're our own worst enemy because we're arrogant about our own goodness or because we play by the rules. Not that you should play against the rules, but there's got to be more to it than that. You have to love way beyond the necessities of convention. That's the truth. See, Christ calls us to love. He didn't call us to be obedient. See? Obedient to rules. He calls us to love faithfully those whom he has given us in his providence, his providential love for us, our families to start with. But as I said the other day, but also the circle of relations we have with people. For people like me who live religious life or priesthood or something like that, you've got to love your parishioners. I gave a homily once. It was a fake homily. It was a practice, okay? So I don't know if I was ordained or I was a deacon, whatever I was. But I was a deacon. And I was stationed in New Jersey, okay, but just before ordination of the priesthood. And we used to practice homilies then. They really worked us, okay? And I was out there, and I gave a rip-roaring, snorty one. I really went after. Rah, rah, rah. I was full of righteousness. And Cash in Newhouse, great Cash. God, what a great man. He raised his hand after, this is when the criticisms come in, or the coaching. And he said, "Hey, Dad, do you love us?" I said, "Yeah, Cash." They wanted to talk to us that way. Why are you yelling at us? Isn't that beautiful? Ted, do you love us? Every parishioner sits in the pew can say to the preacher, "Do you love us?" Not whether, "Gee, you're very smart." Do you love us? Do you care about us? Do you care about our families? Okay? Don't tell us how smart you are. Tell me, do you care about me? Do you love me? Are you out looking for me? Are you looking after me? Are you my companion, my faithful companion, you see? That's the life of the faith. That's the church. That's what it's supposed to be. Not Lord and Master, but servant of the servants. John the 23rd, Servus Servandi Dei, the servant who waits on the servants. I might think of my father, the busboys, the guys that help the waiters out, okay? As they serve the people. Yeah, I believe that stuff. I think the greatest leaders I've said in my lifetime have been the greatest servants. I mean that professionally, the chairs and deans that looked out for the people, looked out for their responsibles, people to whom they're responsible, and who loved them and cared for them. And it was certainly true in the order. The best directors and rectors were the guys that loved the men, that loved the guys. Do you love us, you see? In the professional world, the parochial world, do you love your parishioners, you see? Do you look out for them? That's what matters. Not whether you kept your nose clean. See, not whether you kept your nose clean. Did you love your people? Did you take care of them? Did you love your family? Your wife, your children, your husband, your parents in their old age, whatever. Did you look out for them? Did you take care of them? Did you love them? I think when the end of time, when God calls us together, calls us after our death, I think he's going to ask, did you look out for the folks I gave you? Did you love the people I gave you? I think you better hope that you answer, yeah, I did the best I could. I tried to love them well.